Blog Talk Radio.
Here on 17 Numa Radio. Thank you for joining me this evening. I'm your host, Scott Thomas Outler, and we'll be here live for the next hour and a half. Looking forward to this evening's episode. In the next segment, I'm going to have Dustin Pickering and ZM Wise, who are the founders and editors of Transcendent Zero Press. They publish the quarterly journal Harbinger Asylum as well, and are both accomplished and published poets in their own rights. So looking forward to having them online here in just a little while, and we'll talk about some of their current projects and upcoming events here at the end of 2018 and into the new year that is quickly coming upon us. So I've been thinking a little bit recently that this show has now been on the air going into the fourth month here. Seems like time is really flying by, and definitely starting to get into a bit of a groove with the weekly shows. Possibly going to start putting out more than one a week at some point in the near future as I get more comfortable with this platform. But with that in mind, I wanted to take a couple minutes here in this opening segment and give a thank you to some of the guests who have been on here in the first 11 or so shows. The first of which is poet Heath Brocker, who was on in the opening show with me. His book, To Burn in Torturous Algorithms, is one of the best that I've read this year, and I'd encourage everyone to check that out. He's also the editor at Into the Void magazine for poetry, and I know he's probably already slammed with submissions right now as they get going on their next issue, but encourage people to send more their way anyway. It's a great magazine. I also want to thank Donna Snyder, a poet from down in Texas, who was on a past episode. She's a great poet and also has been hosting the Tumblewords Project workshop down there where she lives for over a decade at this point, and wanted to congratulate her also on her recent Pushcart nomination for a poem in the Lummox 2018 anthology. On another episode, we had Vlada Mars, who is a genius pianist living up in Vancouver, Canada. She came on and talked about her albums, including one that's going to be coming up, released here in 2019. So please check out her YouTube channel and all her albums on iTunes. I also had Peter Rowitz and Peter Norman from the band Spectralux on an episode not too long ago, and that intro song that you heard to the show tonight is off of their upcoming album, which will also be out in 2019. So thank you to those guys. And my friend Don Biaquez, originally from Cape Town, South Africa, now living and splitting his time between France and Spain, is a great poet. He came on, talked about his book In Pursuit of Poetic Perfection, which is co-authored with 4 other poets from South Africa, and that's been doing very well lately. So congratulations to him on the success of that book. And then just last week, had a local poet here from Atlanta, Lane Young, on the show. She's the publisher and editor-in-chief at Kudzu Leaf Press, and also runs a event in the Atlanta area at the Callenwold Fine Arts Center, which is a beautiful venue. So all those shows are archived and can be listened to at any time here on Blog Talk Radio. You can also go to my website, 17numa.com, where there's a page there with links to all of those episodes. Also wanted to give a quick shout out to Alan Britt, Ileana Vanessa, and Hani Zweibel, who came on for segments on past episodes as well, reading some of their work, and hopefully can get them back on for full interviews and readings sometime in the new year. So what else is going on? I'm feeling good because I just finished up the manuscript for what will be my next book coming out in 2019 through Cyberwit. It's going to be called Of Sand and Sugar, and I've been working on that hard the past month since the final ideas started to crystallize and putting the final touches on that project. So that's been a lot of fun. And I also wanted to mention that as we gear up for the holiday season, I do have several of my books on hand, and I have a package deal right now. If there's anyone who enjoys my work and is interested in getting a copy of most of what I've released so far in the last few years, I'd like to encourage you to get in touch with me at my website, 17numa.com, or on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, any of those other great platforms. I have copies of Songs of a Dissident from Transcendent Zero Press, Chaos Songs from Weasel Press, Happy Hour Hallelujah from CTU Publishing, and my most recent book, Abstract Visions of Light, from Alien Buddha Press, doing all 4 of those books for $35. That includes shipping and handling. So please do get in touch with me. They make great stocking stuffers or gifts for anyone who enjoys poetry. And with those books in mind, I thought here to close up this first segment, I'd read a poem that's included in Abstract Visions of Light. And I thought this would be a good occasion to read it on because this piece originally appeared in Harbinger Asylum, which is the journal edited by Dustin Pickering and Z.M. Wise, who will be with us in the next segment. So this is a piece that appeared in that journal last year. It's called Theory of Evolution. Not every step in life is meant to be smooth. How else could we grow and learn along the path? Not every word from our mouths can come out perfectly clean. How else could we be pushed to expand our language of love? Not every truth that they claim to have is quite so self-evident and clear. How else could these documents breathe and bring about a more peaceful union? Not every glimmer in our eyes is meant to sparkle with the stars. Could we seek God in moments of silent darkness? Not every song from the birds can lead to a symphony under the sun. How else could the hawks soaring through the sky find a feast to keep their wings strong? Not every moment in time can be blessed by the divine. Or maybe that's wrong, because I swear that with you by my side, it all seems holy. So once again, that's Theory of Evolution from my current book, Abstract Visions of Light. Thank you for tuning in here, my friends, to Songs of Selah this evening. I'm going to play a track from Californication by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and then on the other side of this break, we'll be welcoming Dustin, Pickering, and ZM Wise to the show. Enjoy.
How long will I slide or separate my side? I don't believe it's been slitting my throat. It's all I ever heard your voice through a photograph. I thought that I've been brought up the path. Once you know you can never go back, I gotta take it on the other side. The centuries are what it meant to me. A cemetery where I married the sea. A stranger thing that never changed my mind. I gotta take it on the other side. Take it on the other side. Take it on. Take it on. How long will I slide? Separate my side. I don't believe it's fair. Slitting my throat is all I ever. Pour my life into a paper cup. The ice is full and I'm spilling my guts. She wanna know, am I still a slut? I gotta take it on the other side. The skyline started and she's in my bed. A candidate for the soulmate blend. Pull the trigger and I pull the thread. I gotta take it on the other side. Take
Songs of Selah here on 17 Numa Radio. And coming on to the show next, going to have Dustin Pickering and ZM Wise. Want to read a quick bio of each of them first and then bring them on to the show. Dustin Pickering is the founder of Transcendent Zero Press and editor-in-chief of Harbinger Asylum. He won a poetry contest in 5th grade and was introduced to Shel Silverstein by his teacher. He is the author of several poetry collections, including Salt and Sorrow, The Daunting Ephemeral, The Future of Poetry is Now, Bones Picking at Death's Howl, Knows No End, The Alderman, Spurious Conversations with Jim Morrison, and a work on aesthetics called A Matter of Degrees. His favorite poets and writers are Federico Garcia Lorca, Dostoevsky, Nietzsche, Henry Miller, W.H. Auden, Frank O'Hara, Audre Lorde, Langston Hughes, among many others. He edited the best-selling Selfhood, Varieties of Experience with Kariti Sengupta. And Z.M. Wise is a proud Illinois native from Chicago, poet, essayist, co-editor, and poetry activist, writing since his first steps as a child. He is co-owner and co-editor of Transcendent Zero Press, an independent publishing house for poetry that produces an international quarterly journal known as Harbinger Asylum. He has published 4 full-length books of poetry, including Take Me Back, Kingswood Clock by Mavlit Press, The Wandering Poet from Transcendent Zero Press, Wolf, an Epic and Other Poems from Weasel Press, and Cuentos de Amor, Red Ferret Press. Besides poetry and other forms of writing, his other passions and interests include professional voice acting, singing, lyricism, songwriting, playing a few instruments, fitness, and reading. So with that introduction out of the way, I'd like to say hello to Dustin and ZM. Are you guys there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm here.
Good deal. Thanks for
Thank you very much for having us.
Hey, it's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Great. This is a great opportunity for me and ZM to speak on behalf of ourselves.
Absolutely. Follow both of your work, so it's a pleasure having you on, and hopefully we can get into several topics here in the next hour or so, including your personal work and also what y'all do there down in Texas with TZP. Maybe that's a good place to jump in. How did y'all meet each other, and what spurred the idea to start a press in the first place?
Dustin, do you want to tell your side?
Yes, I'll go forward with this. Basically, I started Harbinger Asylum because I wanted to get involved in the local poetry community, and I had been to some readings and thought, well, this might be a good way to contribute. And it was originally kind of a zine-style journal. It wasn't like an actual journal. It was printed it out, we stapled it, and anyway, one day I was at a reading at Barnes & Noble, and I met Zach, and I was like, hey, that guy looks really cool because he was wearing a Jim Morrison shirt and, all this. And so I came up to him, and I was like, hey, here, take a copy of this. You might like it. And it was, like the 2nd or 3rd edition of Harbinger. And he just kind of smiled at me. He was like, all right. And then we, we bumped into each other, here and there. And I invited him to be a feature at Coffee Oasis when we had that reading. And that sort of kicked off a long-term established relationship we have now. So I'll let Zach say the rest here.
Yeah, so I met Dustin at a couple poetry readings back when, this place called Coffee Oasis existed. And I think I first encountered him at what they call a dead poets reading. It was during Halloween. You read your favorite pieces by dead poets. So I read one by Jim Morrison, read one by Allen Ginsberg, and then read one of my own to kind of be a snarky rebel. And and then at Barnes & Noble was when we actually first started conversing. He said he recognized the same unbridled passion in poetry and the arts in general as him, and through that we became close friends and eventually business partners. Dustin had the idea for TZ Press quite a while back. I'll let him explain the meaning behind the name of the press, but in 2012, in April, I believe, which is National Poetry Month, we started Transcendent Zero Press, and he took me on as an assistant editor for Harbinger Asylum back a couple of years before that. So I've been heavily involved in that, as well as just having individual pursuits, as well as being inspired by Dustin and countless others who've been just writing just in the world. So, yes, sir.
Absolutely. Hear you on that.
Yeah, definitely hit it off really well. So it was, and you know, I actually came up with the name Transcendent Zero. It was supposed to be a band I was going to start in high school, and it was put together. I took a word from the dictionary I really liked, transcendent, and combined it with Zero, which was a hit song by Smashing Pumpkins at the time. And I thought, this sounds really cool together. And then gradually I developed the concept from it. And that's what we have now, Transcendent Zero Press. And so I couldn't get the band together, so I went, ahead and used the title for poetry.
It is definitely a striking name. I remember it just flashed through my mind back in 2014, I think, when I first started publishing and came across it. It just struck me. There's such imagery and power behind the name that I immediately had to send something y'all's way, because just on that alone, before I had even checked in and saw all the great stuff that y'all were putting out.
We were definitely honored to publish you, sir.
Yeah, I was about to say, when we got you kicking off and we got your chat book out, and we did a lot of work to put that together as the book it was, and I think it turned out really well, and I was glad that you worked hard to promote, and we did really well with that book, so that was definitely a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it was great working with both of y'all on that end as well. Definitely gave me a good understanding of what to expect with publication and like how all that works, and so that was a great introduction for me. So I'll always be thankful for that. I wanted to touch on something, because you had talked about how Harbinger Asylum started off as more of a zine, and you were just kind of doing it out of your house. Maybe take through the progression of how that developed through the years and kept growing into what it is these days.
Well, the initial kickoff of the journal was I went to a poetry reading at the University of Houston here in Clear Lake. I was invited by a friend named Drew Watkins, and he, convinced me to come, and, because I had talked to him about how much I had read and liked poetry, and he invited me, so I came out. And I was thinking originally, who cares about the arts? I'm in Houston, Texas. This is oil and banking city, and when I moved to this meeting, I was like, maybe people really will pay attention to this. And then, the next reading I went to, at Barnes & Noble, I announced I was going to start a journal, and I needed some help and some assistance with how to go through the process. And so originally what I would do is print out a version with my personal printer, and then take it to a print shop and have, say, like 100 or 150 made, and send out a bunch to the people who contributed, go through these readings and pass them out. I gave them away free for a long time. And basically, gradually, we, developed a reputation and had other people contributing. And, like we were saying earlier, me and Zia met. And then, we went from there using we did a show where we actually earned about $300, and we bought a color laser printer, and we're using that. We were printing them ourselves and stapling them ourselves. And one of probably the height of our publishing careers, when we went to Austin International Poetry Festival. I think that was in maybe 2013, and we were able to sell about $200 worth of the journal, and then we were able to use that money to take a trip to La Mesa, where there was Zach was invited to read for the Forest Fest out there, and we really had a great time, and that particular month was like a blast. I mean, but from there we moved into doing an anthology of the previous 2 years of the best of. And once we got that out, I realized, using the method we used for that could be used for the journal, which we were using print-on-demand CreateSpace. And so we started using them for the journal itself, and we've printed anywhere between a 5x8 size to 6x9, depending on what mood I was in. And so Zach has been a really remarkable editor. In the last few editions, he's played a really huge part in picking out the poetry. I pretty much said, hey, take a look at what we have submission-wise, and basically pick what you'd like to have published. And, for a while it was collaborative. I would do a little and he would do a little. There was a point where I was doing all of it, and then he got more involved in the process. So it's just been a very long, it's been since 2010. So we're almost in our 9th year of publishing this journal, and there have been disappointments and discouragements, but we've overcome them. There have been things like financial issues. I'm like, how am I going to come up with the money to print this next edition? And then suddenly magically something would show up and it would pay for it, or I would be able to get it across. And so that was, that's just something that tells me we're in the right field, that people actually look at us and say, oh, they're competent, they're doing something, so here you go, here's a little extra money to help you out with your projects. And so we've had very good success with that.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's been one heck of a thrill ride. That's for sure. There hasn't been a dull moment whatsoever. And yes, as Dustin mentioned before, Forest Fest in Lamesa, which it was definitely one of the highlights for sure. I was invited to be a guest poet out there, and yeah, I mean, definitely 2013 was a very active year. And of course, in 2012, that was the first time I ever went to AIPF with Dustin, and we were definitely, and it was his second time. I was more exposed to just the incredible diversity of people, just the diversity of writers, and we were very honored to watch many of them perform their, as I say, amazing work, and just be encircled by all of that. So, No Soap Radio,
Absolutely, it's great hearing the success stories of when you put in your heart and soul into a project and have the synchronicities of life sort of bail you out in those moments when you need it, and help you know that you're still on the right path and doing what you really care about in life and getting this great art out to people. So that's just wanted to say thank you for that type of work out there. And you mentioned, Dustin, that ZM is taking over the last couple of months at Harbinger Asylum with the editing. So I was maybe ask ZM, what type of work are you looking for? What type of aesthetic are you going for? Or are there boundaries for people that might be thinking about submitting? And talk a little bit about that, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. So, personally, when I select, when I go through the submissions in the selection process, I do have a specific taste, but I'm not at all picky. I take a thorough look, I should say, at everyone's submission. Of course, as you know, the standard is read the guidelines, do not try and be a rebel, let your work stand out, don't try to stand out in the cover letter. So far it's been just amazing. I sort of like Dustin, I look for the metaphorical, the symbolic, the abstract, the quote-unquote weird, sometimes mythological, sometimes very archaic sounding pieces, and they sort of work themselves out as they present themselves to me. I might have a different perspective than the creator does, and that's the point. As creators, we only hold the pen, we only sing, we only hold the camera, we only hold the canvas, and operate with that. The viewer, reader, listener, they have more power than we ever could imagine, because now it's up to them. Unless we desire them to know the meaning behind the piece, the manifestation, If we do, then of course I'm sure we will explain that. Otherwise, as you know, the arts are extremely subjective, and it's up to them to manifest their own meaning. So, sermon over.
Well, that's a good one. It was. And I know that y'all put on some events through Transcendent Zero called the Shindigs that y'all do down there in Texas. Maybe speak a little bit on some of those past shows and if you have any events planned for the upcoming year.
Yeah, I originally, that was the event I mentioned earlier that was able to finance a color laser printer. We did that, I think that was maybe 2012 at Avant Garden here in Houston. And ironically, once I did the event and went through with it, the owner of the venue was very upset with me because she said I was turning people out because it was a bar. And we had a show going on, and they told me right when I was thinking I could charge for tickets when they came in, have people pay. And what they told me when I got there was some people are customers. They're going to want to come in and bypass the paying of the entry fee or whatever. And so the people would come, and I'd say, well, we have a show tonight. It's $5 to get in, and they'd just be like. This is a bar. We can't, we have to come in, it's a bar. And anyway, some people I said, well, you can't come in if you don't pay the entry. And she got mad and said, I had turned out her customers. What do I gain by that? And I just apologized, I was like, I'm very sorry I did this. I wasn't intending to. It was like 5 or 6 people. It wasn't like I, really royally screwed her over as far as the money, but we do these events. I try to keep it at about 3 a year. They help finance other things we do. We pay for advertising sometimes in different venues. There's something called Spin Go here that advertises events and puts them on the internet. Now what we've been doing is a place called Last Concert Cafe. And if you're familiar with the writer of Lonesome Dove, his name is Larry McMurdy. One of his books, he mentions Last Concert Cafe. And it's a really nice Mexican restaurant, and they do a lot of events, and they have a big stage and a patio, and we've used both depending on our crowd. And we had one last year where we brought Lynn Coffin down, and she was really good friends with Sam Hamill, Donald Hall, a lot of those people. She was in with the in crowd basically. And anyway, she was like a big deal to come down here. And she came down and did the reading with us. And it was really fun. We brought in about 30, 40 people, I think. And we also have music. We have live music. And we've got a band out here called Let Me Remember. I've been getting them to play, and they're really good. One of the bands we helped actually start them performing was Mystery Loves Company, and we gave them their first actual full gig, and they're really good. It's a cellist and an acoustic guitarist, songwriter. Like they're really good, and they've played for us several times, and they've really kicked off. They're doing music videos now, and they've got a couple of albums they've put out. But that's just kind of what we do. And as far as ones coming up, I haven't planned any yet, but I normally do 3 a year, and I do them kind of spread them out across the year. So it's like maybe one in like March, and then one maybe over the summer, and then one a little bit later in the fall, something like that. We just did one that didn't bring very many people. I think about 9 people showed up, and we went ahead and went through with it, had a good time. The people that came enjoyed it, and the people that didn't come, they didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, but as he said, we don't have anybody planned yet, so that means you, Scott.
I would
help out there, yeah.
One of these days, I'm going to make it back down to Texas. I'd love to be at a TZP event for sure. That'd be great.
And Zach also, he hosts a couple of, local readings out here on this side of town.
Yes. I host 2 readings, one at Barnes & Noble and then one at this lovely place called Nocturne. And I'm proud to say that I sort of helped the crowd from Coffee Oasis relocate to another venue when I discovered this lovely place called Nocturne. It's like this organic juice bar, and they sell just lovely items. And it's also a restaurant as well, and it's a nice, relaxed environment. People, I've noticed, are more able to be themselves, especially at the open mics, in comparison to Barnes & Noble, but we still do them. And those readings have been going on for, goodness, more than a decade, I would say, back when Oscar Pena used to host. And so if I don't have featured poets or artists, rather, what I have started doing quite a few months ago is I've started to give the open mics optional themes. The very first one I started out with was called Juvenilia Night, which people, including me, would bring our juvenilia. We would perform our work from back in the good old days, and whether we were in high school, middle school, even elementary school, just to see where our heads were at. And one of my most successful open mics was Confessional Poetry Night. We brought in quite a crowd, and I knew it was going to be intense. I was very prepared for that, and of course, like I said, these themes are quite optional. You don't have to perform a piece of that theme. It's completely up to you, but we had quite the intensifying pieces. Everyone's heart rates elevated, I'd say, but yeah. Yes, sir.
Are those monthly events, the Nocturna and Barnes & Noble?
Yes. The Barnes & Noble reading is the 4th Tuesday of every month, and the Nocturne reading is the 1st Monday of every month. So they're fairly close together. We always have a wonderful crowd of poets, and I'm always inspired by everyone who performs, and it's such an honor to sort of coax the newcomers to sort of get up and just at least perform one piece. This group is like many others. We're not there to judge or to criticize. We are there to bask in each other's work and enjoy each other's company. And sometimes we even have therapy-like discussions before or after the open mic. It's very interesting. We tell our innermost secrets, and there is no, at least, harsh judgment, which is just very refreshing, especially in this century.
Absolutely, yeah. Sounds like a good vibe you've got going on down there.
Yeah, I was having a discussion with somebody about how the capacity for sorrow is diminished in our culture. Like, it's not so much the sorrow itself. It's like we do feel this, but the capacity to express it is lost. And so I was telling her that I wrote a lot of stories where I'm trying to express fundamentally a deep sorrow or a longing that has been thwarted in some way. And she seemed to think it was a good idea. I mean, I feel like, we've reached some shallow problems in our country, especially because everyone cares about the shiny things, the little shiny stuff, and it's not like we're looking at what actually matters so much, And I think we're doing that as a distraction to ourselves. We're doing ourselves a great disservice, and I'm trying to use writing as a way of kind of awakening the potential of full expression. And I think that when people come to these readings at Zach hosts, they also get to, express themselves fully as a full individual, and we don't normally get that kind of stuff, and it's really great to do that.
Definitely, definitely. I mean,
Go ahead, Zach.
Yes. Sorry, I was just going to say, there are times when it's very necessary to separate the creator from their work, but especially in this environment, I feel that people would really take on the guise of that piece. Like, we are convinced that it is that piece, that person became the piece, rather. So anyway, I'm sorry I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was going to just piggyback on something Dustin said about the sorrow. I mean, that's the artist's nature. The responsibility is to tap into those shadow aspects of consciousness and really pull out the purity of what it is, or try to search for the depths of what it is to be human. And I was thinking, as you were talking about that the almost temporaryism of emotions and ideas probably have been cut off a lot in this modern culture because of social media and the internet and the short attention spans that a lot of us have now, because we're just constantly scrolling through worlds that aren't ours, perhaps, and then it's more difficult to delve into the self. There's so many distractions, like you said, the shiny objects that people are taking to try to distract themselves from what it is to be alive and to get out in the storms and the weather and feel nature. So I guess getting out in front of other people at these open mics really is an opportunity to awaken those dormant layers of consciousness and really be able to feel part of a community or a tribe. So it's a great aspect of what it is when artists come together. But anyway, end of my rant now. Anyway,
No, that was beautifully said. I couldn't agree more.
Me too. I think that is perfectly addressed.
Thank you. I wanted to also, we talked a little bit about Harbinger Asylum earlier. What else is going on with Transcendent Zero at the moment? Do you have any future releases by other authors you'd like to mention, or any recent books that really excited you that you put out?
We're working on a South Korean poet. He's a best-selling poet in South Korea. His name is Wonsu Kim, and his book is called Prescription of Civilization, and it's basically Christian-based, sort of a looking exactly what we were just talking about, how sick the world can be, and he perceives the need for a Christian spirituality, or Jesus himself, to be present in people's lives to sort of bring us back from this sickness. And then we have another poet named Irma Kurti, who is Albanian, and she's kind of a famous songwriter there in Albania. And she sent me some work, because I've been working with Albanian poets lately, doing chapbooks, and every time someone buys a copy of this year's Harbinger, one of the ones this year, I send them a copy of one of the chapbooks. I'm still got 2 more chapbooks to make, because our last one was not able to present hers in time, and so when she presents hers, I'm going to send it out to the people who ordered, a copy of the fall edition. But that's another thing we're doing is, our goal is to bring different worlds of poetry into the United States, as well as bring United States poetry to the rest of the world. I've had this discussion with, Kirti Sengupta a lot, and his people, that he has that are on his comment threads about, some of the shallowness going on in poetry today. A lot of the backstabbing, the plagiarism, and the just in general, the poetry is supposed to be original. It's supposed to be your own words. It's supposed to be from your very spirit and soul. And I think people are being told what poetry is supposed to be too much. And I think students are being told this is what poetry is and this is how you look at it. Whereas it's not. It's supposed to be a very personal experience, in my opinion. And I think you can only gain that if you welcome yourself to reading on your own and really thinking on what the poet is addressing. Because there's so much shallow, preachy poetry and all this crap there. And it's so much. It's so easy to put the stuff out there now that everyone's publishing something, and it's we've got infested with this social justice poetry, I think, and not that I'm against, raising voices of the marginalized or anything, but it's kind of like it's got to the point where, who's marginalized now? Who really is marginalized? The poetry industry, and at least as far as I can tell, has been very good about, bringing in new voices and giving everyone from the young to different races to different cultures and giving them all a voice, at least as far as I can tell. And people still have issues with, certain aspects of publishing, but I think those will work themselves out gradually. But, it's like if we make it into a political tool, it loses its inherent value as also a spiritual experience. And that's really been my point in publishing is, we're not supposed to preach at people and tell them, how to be or what to believe or who to vote for or any of this. We're supposed to be saying something fundamental to our nature, address who we are as people, as persons, and basically dig really deep into the human spirit, because I think there's something there that's being lost.
I think you have a lot of good points there, and I think if we try to bang people over the heads with any sort of ideology, whether it be religious or political or philosophical or whatever the case may be, even in diet or anything in life, really, the more you try to impose your views on someone, the less effect it has. You have to almost live by example, and part of what that is when it comes to poetry is just being a reflection of your true self and putting out, like, I think that's saying what you were just saying a little bit, reflecting your own true nature, not trying to fit into any sort of box, because once you start putting limitations on things, then you're really becoming the fascist that you are supposedly against. And I think I see a lot of that in certain communities and cliques over the last
and you
few
see
years.
the same type of language being echoed and the same type of bullying taking place in a lot of these places and a lot of these kinds of people. And it's like, when were we supposed to bully people into what we want them to write? When was it okay for people on the left? I mean, this is people on the left who are supposed to, left has always been about being liberal and free, and now we're standing on people and saying, you can't say that, we find it offensive, and a lot of times it's just questioning your ideology or questioning your beliefs or your approach or something of that nature. Is not necessarily a bad, comment towards somebody or a hate speech or any of that. And a lot of people find it that they can, pressure someone that way. And I've had poets who, had poems removed from sites because some idiot sent a thing and said to the editor, this person said this on Twitter or Facebook, and you should just remove them from your site. And it's happened. I mean, and people have actually losing their jobs now because of this hashtag justice stuff.
It's well, I think it's coming originally from a pure place, but it reminds me, you said one of your favorite authors in your bio is Nietzsche, and it reminds me of the careful when you're staring into the abyss, because the abyss stares back at you. So if you're constantly looking for trouble, looking to quell the ills of the world, it's a beautiful thing, and it should be done, and it's actually the responsibility of an artist in a certain way. But
right,
if you stare into it for too long, it's going to overcome you, and those shadows are going to overcome you, and you're going to start doing the same thing. And so I think there's just a fine line, and it takes a lot of self-analysis to walk that carefully and to not become a tyrant.
Yeah, he speaks quite often about, if you confront a monster head on, then you will become that monster. And I think that what's happening a lot of times is, I say this too, a lot of people, they're very well-intentioned, they mean well, but they're approaching it from the wrong angle, and it's hard to argue with a numbskull who's armed with a good intention, because you can't say, well, I agree with the intention, but your method is wrong, Because then they're going to say, well, what method are you going to use? And it's like, well, I would just shut up and move on, in certain respects, because shoving this crap down someone's throat is going to turn them into, angry, and it's just, it's not worth it. It's not worth the fight, That's not how we approach it.
Yeah, the fire with fire mentality is just going to create an inferno in the end. And also, I think one thing that has to be said here is, with all the backbiting type of things that you're talking about, we always have to remember that all of us writers have huge egos, and so that's a combustible scenario with all of these problems that arise. We have to tame those and just all get along.
Yeah, we're all big-headed, our heads in the clouds.
Well, I wanted to mention something here. Watching your posts on Facebook, Dustin, a lot of times you seem to want to be a provocateur and just put ideas out there, not even necessarily because they're coming from your perspective all the time, but because you want to get conversation going, or you want to get reactions from people, which I think is something that an artist needs to do anyway. Am I on point there? Is that something that you try to do on social media?
That is definitely one thing I do. I've actually lost my temper from time to time and said some really horrible things about people I disagree with, and people have called me on it. And in recent years, ironically, since Trump has been in office and since Republicans have been getting their way, I've been a lot more quiet about the politics, because I feel like, Democrats have well, as far as the social media, it's not like I'm bashing constantly. Like, for years I was bashing, this idea of a, conservative Republican who is homophobic and sexist and racist and fascistic and wants the rich to rule us all. And that's a lot of Republicans feel that way. In the South, I think there's that aristocratic pretension, I call it. But I've quieted down a little bit and not been as harsh on that kind of rhetoric, because I feel like it's just not serving any real purpose, and it's getting me upset. It's getting other people turning on me. And I did once say something really nasty after saying something really beautiful, and I got a phone call at 9 o'clock in the morning just as I posted that, from a friend of mine who said that was a really horrible thing to put on social media. And I said, you're right. I'm sorry. I'll go back and I'll delete it. And I deleted it, and so I have to kind of control my temper,
Well, I mean, that's I'm his punching bag. Take it out on
practice on him. Yeah, I practice on him. I get my shots out.
Indeed. So who else likes cheese?
Government cheese?
Yeah. Me and my big mouth.
Let's bring ZM back in here, and
yes.
So you grew up in Illinois. When did you move to Texas, and what was that change like?
It's a funny thing. Ironically, it's Texas pride that gave me my Illinois pride, because when I first moved down here in 2001, the way that people acted about the state, it sort of felt like a cult environment to me, and I was very freaked out. But then after taking a couple of history classes, just learning more about the history, I said, oh, I get it. And then, honestly, I just felt more a sense of pride about where I'm from. I mean, I don't arrogantly boast about it here and there, and I don't think anybody really does. It's honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with being of your homeland, unless it's a traumatic and horrific place. But no matter where you come from in this globe, please just have a sense of pride, just where you're from. And I'm living proof that home is where the heart is. I've been planning to relocate back to Chicago, to the northern suburbs of Chicago. But, of course, TZ Press will still be active. I just won't physically be here. But I actively write about my hometown. I love it so much that I actually wrote a manuscript about 3 years ago, 80 poems about Illinois, where I'm from, and just the surrounding areas, and awaiting final words from a certain publishing press on the yay or nay of that manuscript. So all fingers and toes crossed, please. Yeah, so the change was pretty shocking, but after a while, adjusted sort of. I've been living here for quite a while. I still haven't adjusted to the weather. I run shirtless in December while I'm here, and during the summers, if I'm not in the water, you will not see me outside. I promise you. It's just, you don't even have to make hot tea. All you have to do is just pour some room temperature water, place the teapot outside, and boom, insta tea. So, yeah. However, there are two particular places while I've stayed here that are near and dear to my heart. Austin is definitely one of them, and while I've performed at quite a few events in downtown Houston and Midtown and whatnot, I'll always prefer Galveston. I love the setting more. I love just the groups, the environment. Spiritually, I soak it in a lot more. But whenever I visit my home state, this I'm sure you two would be familiar with this. This radiant aura just lights up within, and this positive energy just flows throughout my soul. And whenever I come back here, it's sort of drained. But like I said, I'm living proof that home is where the heart is. And but I love many of the people I've met here, the experiences I've had here. It's taught me a lot about myself, quite a lot actually. But it's very different though. That is for sure. I think I'll stick with that word, different. I like it. It's
right. take what you will from that word, people.
Different
talk about
no or no?
Sorry, Scott, what was that?
You were talking about the project that you're currently working on with the poems from your home state, Illinois. Maybe also talk a little bit about your most recent book and maybe what your process of writing is in general.
Yes, of course. So the Book of Illinois Poems, that's one of many, sort of like, to refer to an earlier conversation we were having, Scott, just to keep the creative energy flowing. I'm also living proof that that ADD has many benefits. That being said, let's see. So I'm currently taking notes, a part-by-part synopsis of a major project. I'm not going to say what it is, but it's a different form of writing altogether. I finished a chapbook recently that serves as the companion piece for this larger project. It has about 26 poems and poems turned songs, as well as a little essay in the beginning. Besides that, I'm also working on a new notebook collecting pieces that were mainly written on the back of receipts over the years, and these pieces were written in between my other projects that I've worked on this past year. It's been very active, and as well as typing and revising and editing a couple different notepads, including the notes for this major project. As far as my process of writing, it's so fun. Whether it's a poem, an essay, a song, musing, a quip, a quote, a little flash fiction story here and there, I prefer to handwrite first. I give major props to the people who type out the first draft. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's beautiful. For me, I can't. I need to handwrite it. And because for me, especially with handwriting, it's a sense of release. That's what the first draft is about. It's raw, it's carnal, it's beautiful. And then as I type it up and revise and edit and make it look pretty, it serves as the second stage. And of course, I'll usually every piece changes a little bit with itty-bitty tweaks here and there. But I've worked on quite a few books this year, and my newest book, though, I would like to promote. It's actually coming out a week from tonight. It's being released by Weasel Press, who published the book that one of the books that I have the most faith in. It's called Wolf, and then a sister press of Weasel Press, which mainly focuses on more erotic poetry, released a book-length confessional poem of mine called Cuentos de Amor. But this one is my fifth book, and it's a chapbook. It's called Cosmish and the Horned Ones. And there's a little, instead of putting an introductory essay like I've done with my other books, I've put a little character profile of the characters within. It's a sequence of 14 poems, but I believe the book itself is almost 50 pages or a little over 50 pages. And only a few people really know what it's about, and I'm going to keep it that way on purpose. I'd really like to see what the reception is on this one, whether it drives people mad and say, "Where's the summary?" or maybe if they can figure it out for themselves. So, yeah.
Awesome, man. Congratulations on that upcoming release.
Thank you. Definitely. Shout out to Weasel Press, and I'm currently waiting to hear back from 3 publishing presses, including the aforementioned one for my Book of Illinois poems. So just waiting to hear on 3 other manuscripts. So all fingers crossed.
Awesome, man. Keeping busy, keeping creative, and keeping that flow going. It's a good deal.
Thank you.
So, Dustin, maybe talk a little bit about some of your most recent books. And I wanted to mention before you get into that, just congratulate you on the Spurious Conversations with Jim Morrison. That's been one of my favorite books I've read here in the past couple of months. Really sitting out on the front porch, digesting each of those pieces here recently.
Oh, that's that was written, I think, in about 2011 or 2012. It was about maybe 40 pieces, and I selected through them which ones I thought would fit best into the volume. And I intended to self-publish that years ago, and I never did. And then I came and found the manuscript again, and I thought, why don't I pose this to Alien Buddha Press? They seem like a type of press that would enjoy this kind of project. And I shot it off to Red Fox, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we'll take that," and I sent him the manuscript, and it became what it is. And that drawing also is one of mine of Jim. But what happened with that was I've read all of his books, like all 3 of them, probably 500 times, maybe. I don't know. I lost count. Probably after about the 339th time, I actually lost count. But I was reading his, especially what inspired them was some of the imagery in a lot of his lyrics and stuff. They have that one poem called Aztec Night, and that comes from a lot of his, poems about Indians and stuff. And he just had this imagination that was just, out of the world, But another book that I recently released in India with the Waco Press is called Knows No End, and it was a -- bestseller in new releases of Indian poetry, and I don't know why, or Native American poetry, not Indian as in India, but is in Native American, and I think that may have happened because I told one of the publishers, prior to its release, that I had some background in Cherokee blood, and basically probably decided that would help the book jump up a few notches, and I imagine that's what it was. But it ended up on that list, and it was a #1 bestseller, and it stayed there for about a week, and it did pretty well. And everyone who's read it has said very positive things about it. I even had a friend, she's got a master's degree from Cambridge in the UK, and she said, it just really resonated with her. She felt how she compared the poetry to gossamer, and said that it was very gentle and carefully woven poetry. And it's really a story of a woman painter seeking to paint hyacinth. And hyacinth, it's actually a flower that she's painting, the hyacinth flower, but contained within that flower is the story of Hyacinth and Apollo, and she's trying to capture the essence of what is this hyacinth. And throughout the book, she seeks different ways to accomplish that. And she's painting this one painting, and it lasts for an entire year of her painting this one painting. And each season, she kind of develops a different mood or a set of moods to correspond with that season. And so it's really about the artistic process, the necessity of art in the human condition, and humanism, and seeking to be bold and creative and things of that nature. And I promoted it like crazy, and I was pleased with it being on the number one bestseller in Native American poetry. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah, very cool.
What are they doing in the Hyacinth house?
Whoa, there Jim Morrison comes in again. I didn't even think about that, honestly. I funny thing is I've read, I've had Edith Hamilton's Mythology, the book that she wrote. That was kind of a summary of Greek and I believe there's some Viking myths in there as well, Greek and Roman mythology. And my grandmother encouraged me to buy that when I was about 12 years old, and that was before I'd even heard of the Doors. And then I found out Jim Morrison was a huge fan of that book when I started getting into the Doors, and I thought that was a weird coincidence. I was like, well, yeah, that's strange, It's like, but it's a very influential book, so it says a lot about the scope of a book, where it can end up. If it ends up in a rock star's back pocket, what can a book do?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. That journey, it's interesting how all these little coincidences along the way guide us on our path through life. We keep coming back up. These conversations always start to fly by. We have a little over 20 minutes left. I know I talked to both of you about maybe bringing some of your work on to read here tonight. If you have some selections from any of those books you're talking about that you'd like to maybe read a couple pieces each.
I'd be honored, definitely. Dustin, do you want to go first?
You go first if you have something available, because I'm gonna dig through here and find something from one of my books.
I will. I'll read two pieces. So one of them stems from the collection of quote-unquote receipt poems. Most of them were written on the back of receipts, with the exception of a few scraps of paper. I felt the need to definitely read this one aloud. And this one's a bit dark, but it's mostly a memorial piece, and then I'll end it with a more uplifting piece. Hopefully this one is a tad uplifting towards the end as well. This is in response to the recent Pittsburgh shooting, and while the piece is centered on the Pittsburgh shooting, it is in the spirit of all shootings and all mass killings around the world in general. I don't want to narrow it down to one, but this one was like every one of them, was very shocking. So this piece is called "To Cultivate the Trees of Flying Lives," and it starts with an epigraph, and it's from the Passover Haggadah. It says, "In every generation, someone rises up to destroy us. Found words of comfort lost amidst the semblance of question, found words of love lost in the house of irony. Meant to blow in the reckless wind, the attendees claim peace. Meant to find solace in revolution, the attendees cry out shalom. Meant to woo their Sabbath bride with no interruptions, the attendees commemorate peace. meant to instill frisson in their power of prayer. The attendees shout in unison, Shalom. We immortalize you all, 11 of the finest martyrs of their faith. We sensationalize your names, first, last, maidens, until they are inscribed in our minds' corners. We reminisce of you all and your earthen footprints on this Saturday soil. And no matter how many times the axe of greed swings, the counted rings and shield of bark stand together as a diversified soldier, and no matter how many cleansing fires spread throughout the flora's shelters, the guardian branches and shaded leaves will remain strengthened, for it takes no hammer to fall. You were mothers, you were daughters, you were grandmothers, you were granddaughters, you were aunts, you were nieces, you were sisters, you were cousins, you were wives. You were the voices of moral reason, the queens of honorable stability. You were fathers, you were sons, you were grandfathers, you were grandsons, you were uncles, you were nephews, you were brothers, you were cousins, you were husbands. You were the voices of moral reason, the kings of honorable stability. You are spiritual inspirations, living within every vibration of nature's left hand. You appear to us every 8 seconds to remind us that we may move forward. Oh, bookmark consciences. Your breath guides our misinterpreted pathways, parting the oceans of fog to clear our judgment. Your memories surpass the speechless horror that we face, serving as an amiable greeting to the upcoming week. Your descendants' tears fuse to form one unified droplet, a modern fountain of biological youth. Your community's actions drown out the sentences of venom spoken by demonic bipeds. And oh, sweet music everywhere in honor of the prematurely fallen. Daniel, your song of elated life plays at maximum volume the way your rabbi enjoyed it. We rejoice in the knowledge that the creatures of habitual instinct can transform. Swimming in the riches and non-superficial spoils earned, love is all we have ever known, and how it swims. A rose planted in the wake of internal battles past, she stands forever, blooming, always resilient, always persisting. Remember blueberry picking in the summer woods, delighting us with vitamin D hugs and refilling our cup of auras. Inseparable brothers Rosenthal, laughing over the silent sounds of universal humor. The marriage of Simon Says, to never let go of the loving hand of one's equal half. Oh, master of wax, light another elegant candelabra so that it may glow as bright as your moon. To the one who will teach us to be younger, rewind to the innocence texts of romantic verse. Yes, yes, words aplenty to the seekers, words a wandering towards the guru's nest, words of divinity intervening yet again, words in the form of hands gathering to mourn with the interfaith allies who stand by their mutual species in this hour of chaos. They bless the rainfall and curse the flood that follows. They welcome neighbors and freeze their shoulders to their nemeses. They are ants who view corpulent footwear obliterating their mountains to misplaced dirt. They are the ant colony who will rebuild and increase by fruitful numbers, welcoming the brotherhood and sisterhood, the livelihood and winterwood, on tumbling teenage meadows and mischievous shadows, to reflect with the weeping willows and weeping widows. 11 smiling statues of history, memorialized since time immemorial, beneath marble tributes, orbs of steady heartbeat lights. 11 abstract paintings of the heart, 11 newly composed poems of the tongue, 11 rough mixes of songs of the soul, 11 experimental short films of the next step, 11 acorn seeds huddled by an autumn river out of familiar electric joyousness, 11 acorn seeds shrugging off death to take 11 slumberous breaths, one invisible foot in front of the other. To plant the acorn seeds of renewal is to nurture the future in the hands of the parental units of time. To cultivate the trees of flying lives is to witness the growth of an unimaginable magnificence. Guard these trees of lives, for their wisdom, for their stone wisdom is merely beginning.
All right. Excellent.
And then I have another short piece here. It's for those of you out there who are listening who know me, I am a closet romantic and a bit of a sap, so cue eye roll. Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. And this one is fairly new. This was published in this wonderful place called Feminine Collective. If you have not heard of them, please check them out. They're meant to entertain, educate, and empower. And this piece actually became a song, but I will read it to you so that you may keep your ears intact. So, sun rays in strands. Cool in Japanese garden shade, parchment spirits float on a sea of clay. Empty are the raindrops that fall on storm faces, conversing about the philosophical indoor games we would play. You golden Greek goddess, you Norse heroine of mythology, mixing the raiment with remedies, tea sipping and singing of the spices of herbology. Gaia wades in the pool of spring elixir. One magnolia blossoms in response to your witty banter. Minutes pass like seconds riding horses. One steed gallops towards you, equine enchanter. Help my speechless tongue, for it is at a loss for words, attempting to think of clever sentences, lost in your eyes, two Antarctic flightless birds. What is a dream and what is reality? Something to say, some jaw to close. Watching you in musical wonderland, you walk the quadruped teeth of Canis as the anointed nature mother commands. Fighter in her face, barrels of wine and laughter, someday will turn to me to meet her. So we speak in bilingual drafts. Your speech of humor meets my fumbling gibberish, reassuring life to move forward, brief series of moments with you, my last wish. Page after page I write the encounters, cannot stop this newfangled inspiration. You are immortalized in self-indulgent ink, coming to life in my mind again for each manifestation. I will meet you at the corner of the dawn and where the hawk devours the dusk. I have been thawed out of prehistoric ice, waiting for your warm smile next to the last mastodon tusk. Thank you for placing the moon back on her rightful throne in the skies. Voice of noise-canceling priorities, my mind's machine meets yours as you begin to hypnotize. Into trances deep and without escape, my only path is your ancient land. Without simplicity and complication, you stroll with grace, catching sun rays in your yellow chocolate strands. Watching you in perfect motion, viewing you lose yourself in musical wonderland. We are friendly acquaintances, yet do not know one another. If I extend it to you, would you hold my hand? Thank you.
Another good one. Thanks for
Thank
reading
you.
those.
Certainly. Dustin?
Okay, so do you want me to read one as of now?
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and if you've got
Okay.
something out
This is one. Yeah, this is one from Knows No End, and like I said, these are untitled. All of them go, and there's like a poem, and there's several poems per section, and this is one from sort of from the beginning of the book. Sometimes a kiss is more than lips wanting to touch. When I know a kiss, the stranger I embrace becomes a vision, and I withdraw quietly. My hand feels the longing toward creation. I reach for my brushes and palette. As I bend down, I notice a quiet, tender flower lifting its head to my smile. Who is this, my dream? Does this solitude suddenly awaken without me? I touch the tender petals as it shines from my cheek. It is a lovely hyacinth, flower of sacrifice. Why do you retreat from my call? My spirit is a kiss through castle windows. Tears of unfulfilled longing withstood. I may have offended your repose, but I promise friendship. I will not pluck you from your roots, like the world that raped me, pleased at my helplessness. Heart, what do the dreamers and lovers wish? My thoughts become tender and sweet. This flower is my passion, and passion is the fruit of my art. Hyacinth, know I am tender. And that from Knows No End. And I can read, this one's reasonably short, and I wrote this in 2013, and it's called Province. The struggle is born of wounded hands, the night of promise. Your sweet face laying next, near my sad sweetness. I have passed the test of immortality. I am no longer the man of passion. O moon, your face clammed like a pearl in the darkness, morose without remorse. An endless list of nonsense lies carried to the utmost. God will damn your eyes and the sweet cigarette smile of your contentment. I will sing like a bird over your dream. Real pure as a poet shall, the face of time immortal conserves energy and labor, a province of the island community.
Right on. Thanks for reading those.
Snap,
And I have
snap,
no
snap.
idea what that means. I have no idea what it means. It just means.
I guess we'll have to figure it out for you, eh?
Well, that
Yeah, that's the
touches on
goal.
what ZM was saying earlier. That's all we can do sometimes is just put it out and reflect it and let everyone pick up the pieces from there in their own way.
Exactly. I never go to an art museum without my notebook just in case. It's especially visual art when it stares right back at you, saying, "What do you think I mean?"
Well, that's
Right.
yeah. I love writing ekphrastic poems and
Yes.
reflecting on those pieces of art.
Oh yes,
I got
yes.
to see,
Ekphrastic poetry is
Salvador,
amazing.
I got to see Salvador Dali's Christ of St. John of the Cross in person at Atlanta Museum in Atlanta a few years back, and it's been one of my favorite paintings of his because it's very provocative. Well, not provocative, but it's very deep in insight in its own, and it's a pretty average image. I mean, it's not like it's extraordinarily complex or anything particular. It's just that the title of the piece as well as the image itself coming together, and it seems like you think about it and it's like, well, just wow. I mean, he had such a brilliance, and his ideas were, he was really up to date with all the latest science news, and a lot of his paintings reflected relativity and catastrophe theory and Freudian psychoanalysis and stuff like that. He's a fascinating painter.
Oh, agreed.
We're coming up
Yeah.
here to the last few minutes of the show, fellas. I guess in these last moments, maybe, first of all, appreciate y'all both coming on, and maybe talk a little bit about, as we're nearing the end of 2018 here, what your plans are for the new year ahead.
Well, let's see. Besides awaiting the words on these pending manuscripts, so my last book was published in 2015, and I had 2 books published that year. I'm not too crazy about the 3-year gap, the absence without a book. I haven't stopped writing or anything, but that hasn't been the issue at all. It's and I've been greatly compensated because in between that I've had many individual pieces published here, there, and everywhere. But for me, it's just the continuity is very important to me. So definitely have at least, from now on, at least 1 to 2 books released per year. And again, latest book, Cosmish and the Horned Ones, that will be out on Amazon by next Monday. And I also chose December 17th because that's when Hunky Dory by David Bowie, my favorite artist, was released in 1971. So
Okay, very cool.
Yeah. Definitely.
Also, my grandmother's birthday, so good date.
Oh, right on. Well, happy early birthday to her. And just to release more. And one of the best moments, especially just besides being involved in TZ Press, but just in general, just recruiting new voices all around the world, whether their craft is visual, oral, or written, or a combination of the three, and coaxing them to expose their work, encouraging them to at least spread the word about themselves. And I've interviewed plenty of people on my YouTube channel. Hope to interview plenty more about their work, no matter where they are. Skype is a beautiful tool. So it's just as much of a pleasure promoting myself as it is promoting others. And we can support each other in this craft, even if we are in the craft for ourselves.
Amen to that. Absolutely. And
Dustin?
all the best in the year ahead. And I'm looking forward to that book that you're going to be releasing through Weasel Press. Very cool.
Thank you very much
for
having us, Scott.
Oh, my pleasure. What about with you, Dustin? What's the overall outlook for 2019?
I'm still waiting from several presses or several journals I've entered poetry into. I've even got one that's a paying sci-fi market. It's a journal called Analog, and I'm trying to, I'm waiting to hear from them. I entered a story into their, into their queue, and basically I think I did that in late October, and they said it takes 2 to 3 months to respond. So I'm kind of just waiting along, and I have another one that said it's up to 10 days, and that was about 7 or 8 days ago. I entered a poem into their thing and waiting to hear from them. So I entered a bunch of poems into something called, I think it's called the American Journal of Poetry, and they like a lot of edgy verse. They publicly say they're not into the field of political correctness, so that makes them interesting. And I entered a bunch of stuff to them that hopefully they'll enjoy. If they don't, I guess they'll try again. But they've had a lot of high class names, and including Billy Collins and people like that who have been published with them. A good solid list of names. They're worth checking out. And I just keep networking, and I also do music and visual art, and may try to do some more visual art this coming year rather than so much the poetry. I haven't done as much visual art in recent time, but I went through a period where I did a lot, and I'd probably go back to that depending on what my mood is. I sometimes have trouble calling up those forces.
Yeah, if you want to hear Dustin's musical work, he has a SoundCloud, and I've been practicing my voice over the years and started to upload a cappella originals, especially pieces that have already been published, the lyrics wise, and that's on my YouTube channel. So Dustin and I, we try to immerse ourselves in all areas of the arts. We know nothing of limit.
I like that. Very cool. Good way to express it. And just want to say again, thank you both for coming on this evening. Congratulations on all the recent successes, and just thank you for everything you do with Transcend and Zero Press and Harbinger. Always a wonderful read every quarter. So keep up the good work, and wishing y'all both great success for the rest of this year and into the 2019.
Thank you so much for having us, Scott. Poetry lives. Long live the arts.
Yes, thank you very much, Scott. It's a wonderful, wonderful pleasure of mine to be on your show.
I appreciate it, guys, and hopefully we can do this again sometime next year.
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Look forward to having y'all back. All right, y'all have a good evening.
You too, Scott. Thank you so much.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. All right, so that was Dustin Pickering and ZMYs of Transcendent Zero Press. Please go check out their website and their YouTube channels and everything you just heard them talk about. Really enjoyed this conversation this evening. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time here on Songs of Selah. Have a great holiday season. Cheers.